On this week's video, we are going to talk about plastic mulch. Week's video, guys, just a quick recap. You guys watch us get this irrigation set up, all this drip irrigation set up in this new tunnel, which you can see down here. If you did not catch that video, I would recommend that you go back and watch this series. I am doing a 52-week part series for Bootstrap Farmer. Those of you that have followed me on my journey all the way through, let's get started on the next one. Well, what we're going to talk about is plastic mulch, landscaping fabric, contractor's grade mulch, whatever you want to call it, it's the same thing. Now, there are basically two different designs that I have personally seen of this. You're going to see one which is a lesser quality, cheaper grade. Most of this stuff you're going to see, I did buy this through a commercial company, but you will see this most at your big box stores. Something easy for you guys to go get. It is a landscaping fabric. I'm not going to unroll it here, but if you can kind of get the gist by looking at it, it's basically like a thick felt, kind of almost like a quilt style backing. It has its place. I would say if you had raised beds and you had a couple raised beds or a small walk path or something like that, what that stuff is made for, it's not UV protected. It will degrade in the sun and the weather. What it's for is you want to lay that down and you want to put wood chips on top of it on walkways, or you want to put gravel on it like drainage or anything like that. What we are going to talk about today is commercial grade landscaping fabric or landscaping mulch, whichever. You'll hear it called both, two different terms. This is going to be a very thick, I think this is 3 to 5 mil. It may be closer to 5 mil if I remember right. It is a commercial grade. I do buy it from a commercial landscaper. I bought 1,000 feet of it because I do have some outside beds on my DIY tunnel that we are going to mulch also. But I recommend that you do your homework on this. Don't always buy the cheapest landscaping fabric. Spend a little bit more money, and it's not much more. We're talking a handful of dollars more to get the contractor grade stuff that will last you year after year after year. But so what we are going to do here is, you know, the back half of this high tunnel here, we have 5 50-foot beds here, and this back half is going to be my determinate tomato side of my high tunnel. The reason why I want to use this landscaping fabric, besides it looks very aesthetically pleasing to the eye, and you guys do know I am all about the way a looks of a high tunnel looks. I want my tunnels or my outside growing beds to look like they're, not say perfect, but I want them to look like I tried and I did a good job and it's well organized. Us as human beings have a tendency to look at things, if they're organized, if they're done well, if they look good, pleasing to the eye, you kind of get that thought of he knows what he's doing, she knows what she's doing. They take time, they take pride in their work. And when you do that, you feel better inside. Plus, it portrays out to your customers that you're actually taking more time and you actually care about the food that you provide to them. So what I like to use this, number one, is aesthetically pleasing. Number two, it keeps the weeds down. When you cover your soil, you always want to either plant into bare soil or you want to cover bare soil. Because the sun, the UV and the sun and stuff will burn through your nitrogen of your compost. You can see how dry this is. And it was pretty wet when we put it down a month ago. So, I mean, just being inside of the high tunnel here, the top inch is laid out, is dried out. Well, now the bottom, you know, as we get about 2 inches in, you can see how it's darker color. So it's still wet down inside, but the top layer is dried out with the sides rolled up and the wind going through here. But saying that, this landscaping fabric will keep moisture into the ground soil, and any moisture that comes out, whether it's from a hose or anything, will drip through that and also keep the bed wet. So let's get started. Let me show you how I do it. All right, guys, let me show you my little jig here that I made. Very simple. This is just scrap pieces of wood that I had in my garage. I had a 8-foot 2x4 is all I had, and a couple hose clamps and a broken broom handle. That's all it is. So as you guys can see, all I used was that piece of picket, which you don't have to use this if you don't want to. I did. All this is for is a level footing to keep this from flipping over as I'm pulling the landscaping fabric. Got a 48-inch piece of 2x4 here, 18 inches pieces of the same 2x4 cut, screwed into each other, and I got a piece of block here just bracing that together. And I drilled a couple holes in that 2x4 What that's for is the broom handle actually goes through here, and then your landscaping fabric rides there. It's got 2 hose clamps here. All that's for, I put one on the outside of this and one on the outside of this side. All that does is while I'm pulling it, it doesn't pull that broom handle out. So let's get this landscaping fabric set up in here, and I'll show you. This landscaping fabric's only 3 foot wide. Just run it through. See, it works great here. Run it through, and then put your clamp on the inside of this handle here. Push that clamp tight, push that tight up against it, and then you just tighten the clamp on the inside here, and that will still keep that handle from walking out. But what it'll do is it'll keep this thing from jagging back and forth. So what I did was buy 3 foot landscaping fabric, and if I do have a little bit hanging over the edge, it doesn't hurt anything. We've got walked pathways. It's really not going to get a lot of foot traffic in here, just in the pathways, so it's not going to hurt anything. You can see how thick this stuff is. It's very, very thick, and it's woven. That's the good thing about it. It will not come out unless you cut it or rip it or anything like that. But I will show you how we use this. So slide this over a little bit more. There we go. And all we need to do now is just grab it and pull it. Here, and you can see that we have our drip irrigation here. I don't want to cover up these valves on the end in case I do have to get in here and do any kind of flushing of the system, or I have to fix anything. I don't want to have to try to tear all this apart. But what I will do is I will fold this under on itself, as you can see, just like that. I will pull it to the end of the bed. And I kind of try to take it a little bit even here, so I kind of split the difference on both sides of the bed here, just like this. And I will just take 3 or 4 landscaping fabrics staples, and I'll put one on the ground here. Always keep a rubber mallet. I like to keep all my landscaping staples in one bucket, and then I keep a rubber mallet in there, so anytime I need it, I can just grab that bucket, do the job, put the bucket back in the garage, and everything, every tool is where it needs to be. It's part of that lean thing we keep talking about. I'm just putting it on here to hold this down. And the cool thing is, if you buy good landscaping fabric staples from a good reputable company, you can reuse these year after year. I'm on my 5th year of these. These are coated metal. I buy 4 or 5 cases. When I started gardening 5 years ago, I bought 10,000 of these staples, and I just reuse them. When I pull this plastic up from the field, I just put them in a bucket and I keep reusing them. They work great, and I've never had any issues with them. Well worth the money I spent on these things. But I always put my drip irrigation in the middle, and then we put the holes in here. Let's get set up, and I'll show you how I cut the end. I grab my hammer, 4 more staples. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this past my irrigation line here, and I'm going to look and see, okay, this is where I want, right here about where my irrigation line is where I want to cut that fabric. You can cut this with a knife. If you cut this with the knife, this is woven, remember, so it's going to be woven like this. It is going to shred apart. I want to pull this nice and tight here and just see where I'm at. My valves are right here. So I know that my bed is going to start back here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to split the difference. Now, if you take this, pull the fabric tight, and just torch it in a nice straight line, the straightest you can. It will trim the edge of that. See how nice and neat that is? Now that will not razzle off. It's the same thing as if you're using some type of nylon rope or anything like that. If you put a little heat on the end, it will seal the end of those fibers and it will not unwind. So now you see we got a nice cut edge that we can use. Take your fabric, your staples, and it's as simple as this, guys. Simple. So let me get all the landscaping fabric put on the rest of these beds, and then I'll show you how I put the holes in it. Drip tape emitters are set at every 12 inches. So when I set up a new piece of drip tape, I like to cut my flush cut to go into these fittings right before that emitter. And the reason why I do this is right here. So when I run it all the way down, I know this is 0, 12 inches is an emitter, 24 inches is another, and I do that because that's how I know where to put my holes. And that's always something good. You always got to think ahead because of stuff like this. You may get this far ahead and go, oh man, I don't even know where my emitters are because I've got an emitter here because I just cut the tape where I wanted it willy-nilly. How do I know where to go? Ultimately, it doesn't hurt the plant that much because it is getting enough water, but I like to put every one of my plants on that emitter. That's why I got the 12-inch drip tape. So I had 12-inch and 24-inch spacing. It's easy math. 12, 24, 36, 48. Easy math. So what I will do is I will get my tape measure. I've got a 100-foot tape measure. This is high tunnel specific. I keep it in a bucket with my landscaping fabric staples. That way when I need it, when I do my beds, I always have it. I don't have to search for it in my truck or anything like that. I have an extra one that's in my construction stuff for my home. This stuff here is for high tunnel gardening only. My stake in at the beginning of that, and if you go 12 inches, I know that's going to be roughly is going to be my first emitter. Now you're going to ask, all right, I see where you're going with this. How are you going to do this and not burn through your irrigation? You will burn through your irrigation if you don't do this right. Hence the reason why I only set my irrigation within this first middle yellow line here. What you can do is you can see this. You can see the irrigations right there. So you don't want to burn a hole right above your irrigation. You're not burning a huge hole. You're just burning a pocket-sized hole that you could put a tomato plant or a pepper plant or whatever you're putting in the ground in. So I know my first tape is right here up against this line. My second one is right there. This one I can see visually with that yellow line. This one I cannot. So what I will do is I will go in the middle of this and I can notice that's there. So I will pull this. Just as simple as that. See how small that hole is? That's all you need to put a tomato plant in. You don't need a huge hole here. You can, if you want to. All you're doing is inviting weeds that are within that area to find sunlight and come through. So the smaller hole, the better. Find your drip tape. Notice your drip tape there. Notice your drip tape there. We're going to go 24 inches. Just like that. 12 inches, 24 inches. Find your drip tape. You kind of get the gist of all this. Skip your 12, hit your 24, find your drip tape. Just like that. All right, I got all the plastic laid. Got all the holes punched into that plastic. One thing I do want to talk about is I know a lot of people may be concerned with the amount of plastic that we use in this world, or the amount of plastic possibly that I'm using here on my farm. Here's the thinking behind that. I try my best to not use single-use plastics here on the farm. Now, single-use plastics would be something like possibly water bottles, anything like that that you may use one time and then possibly throw away into a landfill or recycle. We want to try to stay away from single-use plastic. So a lot of this plastic you see, which is high tunnel plastic, of course, landscaping fabric, landscaping mulch, whatever you want to call it, seed starting trays, up pots that you would pot up tomatoes or pot up peppers. Try not to use solo cups whenever you can, because that's basically a single use. Try to use something from a reputable company that has years and years of experience back behind it, that you could possibly use those plastics for years and years and years. Like we talked about earlier, this landscaping fabric has a 5 to 15 year property to it. Depends on how you do it. Now, I would assume if you kept it covered like this inside of a high tunnel, you may get 10 years out of it, 15 years possibly. I have used this center piece of plastic here. You see it's a different color. I have used this plastic for 5 years now in different locations, outside and inside, and it still looks like new besides a little bit of UV fading. Once again, guys, go check out bootstrapfarmer.com. They are the plethora for anything seed starting to high tunnels to pot up pots to anything cool like that. You need to check those guys out and give those guys a little bit of love. Once again, guys, I will see you next week.